Destiny 2 Shadowkeep has now been out for a couple days, depending on when you're watching this. Some of you may have already put 10 or more hours in, and others are still trying to log in. For what it's worth, I've been able to play a lot so far, which is rare for me. For whatever reason, this thing called time has just been harder and harder to come by the older I get. So of course, being a YouTuber means it's time to ramble off all my thoughts. I'm planning on going in depth on many of these things in future videos. Like for example, I'm planning on making an entire video explaining the story and specifically the ending. Cause what the heck was that? That and more should be coming out later this week, probably tomorrow, so stay tuned. And if you're not yet subscribed, make sure to do so that you don't miss any future uploads. I promise there's a lot of exciting stuff coming soon that you're not going to want to miss out on. I've also been trying to utilize my social media to interact with you guys more, so if you could check the links in the description to follow my Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Christian Mingle account, I'd greatly appreciate it. I'm not going to go too in-depth in this video, these are just my first impressions after all, and my opinions can certainly change over time. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers as much as I can and will only be showing the first few campaign missions. If you don't want anything spoiled though, I'd suggest you just listen to the video instead of watching the screen. First things first, for me at least, how is the campaign? How is the story? Shadowkeep's story is a weird one for me because while I don't think it's particularly, good, it is still pretty effective at what I think it's aiming to do. So let's talk about the bad first and get that out of the way. The story starts off with Eris accidentally unearthing some ancient evil thing underneath the moon. You find out what that thing is only about 5 minutes into the campaign, and from there on out it's your job to discover what that thing is doing. And the story doesn't change at all from that point on. That isn't to say that stories can't be good if they have a simple premise. Some of the best stories are very simple at their core, and I would argue simplicity is many times the best approach when it comes to storytelling. The Last of Us' story is very simple. Take this girl that is the cure to the zombie apocalypse to the Fireflies. God of War's story is also very simple. Take Mother's ashes to the highest peak in all the realms. Done, easy to understand, that's it. But what those stories do from there that Destiny doesn't do is expand upon that premise and go to unexpected places. Shadowkeep's story largely remains the same throughout, and it abruptly ends with a conclusion that is really cool, but doesn't feel like it's the end. I personally like the fact that the story continues on into the endgame and the raid because it makes the conflict feel like a big deal and is something that is constantly going on. But for people who are just gonna play the campaign and never see the raid, the experience here, while still very aesthetically appealing, is largely unsatisfying. Now that the bad is out of the way, what is good about Shadowkeep's story? There's actually a lot. In the grand scheme of things, the fact that the actual story of Shadowkeep is more of the same doesn't really matter. Not only do many people, myself included, mainly play for the endgame and cooperative experience, but Destiny tells its story in a particular way. Destiny isn't as much about the characters as it is about the universe as a whole. Destiny is much more what is happening to your Guardian, not about your Guardian themselves. Or at least that's something I would argue. With that being said, the events taking place in Shadowkeep and the bigger threats that follow are interesting enough to drive the story forward. Even though there wasn't really any character development and exciting twists and turns in the campaign, that initial question of what did Eris unearth, why is it there, and what does it want was enough to keep me playing. I genuinely wanted to experience the next mission and figure out what was going on, despite the fact that the goal stayed the same throughout. The actual universe of Destiny is an interesting and well-told one, and I really enjoy learning about all of the big events going on inside of it. That is much more interesting than focusing on the legacy of your character specifically. It would be great to have both, but if you could only choose one, having the universe be the extremely interesting thing and the focus of the narrative works a lot in a game like this. I will also call to attention the soundtrack and design of the environments. They are top notch as always. Just because they're always superb doesn't mean they don't deserve to get mentioned. I think sometimes that aspect can get overlooked because it's just what people expect at this point, but it's good to still give credit where credit's due. Some other things that stood out to me after my first few days or so of playing are changes to the HUD, materials, and gear. I like the little class icons over people's names. It might be unnecessary since classes are pretty easy to tell apart as is, but I'm not complaining. I love the fact that you can see your ghost next to your character. but I'm not sure if the Sparrow just makes the space too cluttered. I'm kind of feeling it out right now. Also, these are small nitpicks, I know. The same goes for gear and stats. While I like a lot of the new inclusions and I'm always a fan of Bungie making the customization a little deeper, the fact that you have to toggle to go to a separate menu now to apply shaders might be slightly overkill. Maybe that's a hardware limitation, I don't know. I just thought it was weird that they weren't next to everything else anymore with Armor 2.0. I really like the seasonal rewards instead of just getting random Eververse packages, and creating a material that is exclusively made to infuse items is also a welcome addition. I'm also glad that they separated bounties from your quests again. All these things are good changes in my opinion. So overall, Shadowkeep is a good Destiny expansion, at least off of my first impressions. I think Forsaken built a very solid foundation, and now Shadowkeep is building off of that without Activision controlling monetization and potentially other things over Bungie's shoulder. As a whole, it feels very much like Rise of Iron to me, actually. That could partially be because it's year 3 of Destiny 2, while Rise of Iron was year 3 of Destiny 1, which makes me feel really old, but I feel like they have some similarities. Like it or not, Shadowkeep is filled with reskins. We're so far in the reskin hole that we're even getting reskins of Destiny 1 reskins. Like Tanik's ship, for example, it came out in the House of Wolves, and there was reskin for the Taken King, I believe. It had the Taken stuff, and the spider tank that you fought a million times is already like sitting there dead. And now it's being reskinned again for like a second or third time. That doesn't bother me all that much, but others might be really bothered by it. Another example is that Rise of Iron reskinned the Cosmodrome and added the Plague Lands, while Shadowkeep reskinned the Moon and added their own little zone out there. Some of this stuff has been old enough that newer players might think it's all new, but longtime players since Vanilla Destiny 1 like me will recognize that these are reused locations right away. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but recycled content and concepts are here probably more than I've ever seen them. I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but Shadowkeep is more Destiny. People have been saying that for years, but it's true. It can make a ton of quality of life changes and improvements, but at its core, it's the same game. For many, that's a good thing, as I think Bungie is definitely trying to cater towards their more loyal fans. But to others, if you didn't like Destiny before, there's a good chance you still might not like it. But then again, maybe you are just the type of person who gets bored playing all looter shooter games, no matter how good they are. And Destiny 2 is a very good looter shooter, MMO, RPG, whatever you want to call it, game. It just is at this point. The good news is that if you're on the fence, most of the content is now free, and if you're able to play through all of the old content and still want to experience more, then I think buying Shadowkeep is a no-brainer. You'll be getting an insane amount of value for your money at that point. Sure, you'll have to trudge through Curse of Osiris, but if you already made it that far, then, you know, you made it through the hard part, okay? Forsaken is also there too, which is a very good expansion. For most of the people watching this video though, you've probably already bought and have been playing Shadowkeep along with me, so you don't need any convincing. With that being said, down in the comments, let me know your thoughts on the expansion so far. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.